I am joined today by Brian Johnson. Brian is a senior technology leader with a passion for building people, teams, and processes that change the world and drive exceptional results. He has a track record of aligning technology initiatives with business strategy and has done so at a number of enterprises, including Aon, Protolabs, and currently as a senior IT manager with Donaldson. Brian, thank you so much for being in my orbit and for joining me today on Cupalo Conversations.
Thank you for being in your orbit. This is very exciting. Change the world. That's a little grandiose, but we're going to make it happen right here today. So,
I love it. Well, I want to talk to you today about team building, which definitely can change the world. But first, walk me through your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
it's a windy journey. I'm not quite sure. A lot of it was happenstance here and just really being open to opportunities as they sprout up and come via a whole bunch of different paths. So, I probably started my technology journey not as most people do through school, but it was more something just picking up and learning on the job. So, a lot of self-taught, a lot of just, I want to try that. I want to do that. That looks interesting. Sign me up. And eventually that started to snowball into different opportunities, different careers, and different orbits of people. And so it just started to really organically grow from financial services to insurance to manufacturing to, now industrial manufacturing, and loved every minute of it. But it's mostly just, it's been being curious, been trying the next thing, and never afraid to try something new here.
That's awesome. Well, I admire that tremendously. And through your journey, I imagine you've built and led a number of teams. And like I said, I'd love to talk with you about that today. So, if you were baking a cake and the cake was a high performing team, what would the ingredients be to make that recipe come together? So, what are the fundamental or crucial elements that go into building a high performing team?
I think there's a couple things that have to come together. So I think you have to get to know the people on your team. And just like you would have to get to know the individual qualities of every ingredient that you're going to put into a recipe, everybody has a little bit of a different spice, a little bit of a different flavor. And really understanding how to bring all of those different things together is the first component of it. And in order to do that and bring all those things together, you got to foster trust. You got to foster, the safety for people to be able to, openly talk about things, be able to communicate, be able to try new things without fear of failure, and bring it together. I had a, really good boss say to me, people have to have like three things. They have to have, a clear understanding of what they're supposed to do, a clear understanding of knowing how how doing it good looks, and then a clear appreciation and tie for how that's going to help the organization move forward. And if you can foster those three things in individuals, you're going to start to foster the conditions for a team. I think what a lot of leaders fail to do, though, is they fail to actually set aside time to build the team. There's team meetings and stand-ups and things, but it's not really working on the dynamics of, how do we improve communication? How do we actually work better together? How do we start to solve problems that we might be having interpersonally? And so it's also creating the space and time to make that a priority for the team. And that's, I think, one of the most overlooked things that most leaders do.
Yeah, that's a really good point. What do you think then leaders do tend, as opposed to focusing on those crucial elements, where do you think that their focus tends to lie?
Right now, I think most leaders tend to focus on, the here and now. It's the next task that's up. It's the firefighting. It's the present. They're hyper focused in what's going on. And I think one of the most crucial things that you can develop is the ability to step back and take a look at things, objectively of, how is this going? How are things functioning? How are people moving interdependent of each other or dependent of each other, and what's happening? And so I try to make space and make myself be aware of, I need to step back from, being involved in this, and just observe, what's happening. How are people feeling? Who's happy? How are results coming across? And then start to figure out the whys behind those things. But it's really stepping back and observing is, to me, is fundamental.
You've worked at a number of different shops in town in the Twin Cities, and I'm curious, is that something that's not encouraged when you come into a new organization to like, hey, slow down, meet with everybody on the team, get a sense of where everyone's at? Or is it instead it's like jump right in and let's start delivering? Like let's go. And I guess would you advocate for the slowdown to later be able to move faster? I guess how have you experienced
Oh,
that coming
yeah,
in?
100%. Everybody is hyper focused on results. That's what people's bonuses are paid for. That's what they're incentivized to do is to bring results. And I think the more that we can shine a light on, you bring results by bringing people together. You bring results by building teams to be able to accomplish big things and start to incentivize that. I think that will start to change people's perspectives. But people are behaving in a way of how they're compensated. They're compensated on results. Get this done. Finish this next task. And so they don't spend the time to build the bigger picture, to build the system. I think a lot of people, they'll say I'm a team builder, or I do these, these things. That's my superpower. But really, like, a team requires a whole system around it of, how do you, set up training for people? How do you fund these things? How do you know, cover PTO for the broader, group? And how do you hand off between different parts of the organization? And so it's, I'd encourage people not just to build a team, but you have to build the system within an organization that's going to foster good teams. And a lot of companies, I don't think, spend the time or the energy to work on the mechanics of what that looks like. Of, how do I recruit good people? How do I maintain good people? How do I build up people that want to get to the next levels or do different things? And it takes funding, it takes time, it takes support, and it's absent in, I think, most companies.
Yeah. Well, that's a sad reality, but I am curious, is it possible for an individual like yourself to come into an organization where there are no systems? Let me ask it more bluntly. Can you build great teams within a terrible culture?
Um, you can for a while, but so it is possible to do great things in a bad culture. It doesn't last very long. And in order to get people to move forward, you can't completely isolate them from the rest of the company. They have to interact with other individuals, other teams, and if all of those interactions aren't on some virtuous cycle of getting better, of improving, if it becomes toxic, it's really hard to do it over the long run. I'd say it's definitely possible in the short run, but I'd say find a company that has a better culture. If there's a piece of advice out there, and build the team there.
Yeah,
Because otherwise,
for
you're setting up good people for failure in the long run.
yeah. Well, I imagine you must have a process yourself for evaluating a company's systems. How do you go about when you're interviewing or you're looking for your next opportunity? What are you looking for under the hood to see, like, how does this company set leaders and teams and individuals up for success? Yeah. What is your process for figuring that out?
And this might sound like horrible. Like, I'm more looking for people that I want to work with than I am looking for, like, the companies that have all of these things in place. And so it's finding people that have a growth mindset. It's finding people that are, open to development, open to change, that are, doing that stuff actively. And you can tease this out very easily with just a few questions of, can you tell me about the last person you promoted on your team, and what did they do? Or how are you dealing with a challenging individual on your team that might need some coaching, or some advice to move into their next career opportunity? So just seeing how leaders are interacting under those situations. If they have no answers for those things, it's usually a red flag of, they're not spending time to invest in people, to think about these types of issues. And so it's, I'm going to look elsewhere, see something else. But if they have, you know, good answers, that are thorough, that, are backed up by this, it's to me, it's a green flag of, okay, they're doing these things, they believe in these things. And Minneapolis, where I'm from here, is, it's a relatively small market, so you can usually get a good indication of that based on just networking of who's happy where, of you know different leaders' reputations, and so it's also something to be aware of as a leader is your imprint is out there much broader than you think it is,
Yeah.
and it's easier to find those things out these days.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great answer. I mean, companies are made up of people. So you're going in and you're figuring out, are these people that I want to work, side by side with? Are these people that inspire me? And to your point, have themselves eaten their own dog food, for lack of a better way of saying it, right? They practice what they preach.
Oh, 100%. And in leaders being vulnerability is also another good tip. So it's like if you ask somebody in an interview, so what's the last mistake you've made? Leaders, we make these all the time. If they're willing to acknowledge, hey, I did this, it probably wasn't the right decision. This is why, this is what I learned. Same question they're going to ask you as a candidate. But if they're willing to have that vulnerability, that insight and intuition into themselves of, yeah, we're humans, we make mistakes, but we're trying new stuff and we're learning from that and we're getting better. Like those are the people that sign me up and let's go do big things.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And I think it is something that builds trust too, right? Even with your team admitting a failure, I do think inspires people to trust you more, and then they're willing to go the extra mile. And I think it also creates that psychological safety that, okay, I'm free to make mistakes too. We're flawed people here.
Oh, 100%. And as the technology is changing, nobody's omnicompetent out here. Everybody has stuff that they're good at and stuff that they're not good at. And I think just acknowledging that of, I've got shortcomings out here. I need people that are going to be better at these things than I am is like step one to building like a good team of, I need your insight and input because you are much better in this arena than I am. And that basic acknowledgement of, my limitations or any leader's limitations it's a good thing. It fosters bringing that out of other people, and it fosters them raising their hand too and saying, okay, you're right. I might need some help in this arena, or I don't have to have the answer. I can tap into another team member or somebody else. So it's that lead by example type of a thing, and tends to work out really well.
Yeah. Well, what about when, speaking of mistakes, what about when somebody on the team is not performing well? What is your process for going about helping them? And ultimately, when do you determine that somebody is not coachable or not a good culture fit? Because those are two kind of different things. People can have their own sort of driving principles or values, and they can be incongruent with a company's, and that's no fault of either per se. And then you could say there's a fault with the person if they're underperforming or they're not meeting appropriate expectations or they're not coachable. So how do you deal with some of these very kind of big bucket performance or non-fit, I guess, issues?
it and this goes back to knowing the individuals, knowing the ingredients, because they're the one thing like I want to know is, the first thing I want to know is, so why is this happening? So it's really sitting down with the individual, you know, you know, not talking about person, talking about things. So I've noticed these particular things going on. I want to see if anything's going on with you. Just want to understand, where we're at in this situation, because there could be a lot of things that are going on outside of work, things that are impacting people's ability to focus and comprehend. And so it's really understanding why the non-performance is there in the first place. And so, if, and you can solve that a whole bunch of different ways depending on, why you figure that, that's occurring. But if it's an issue with, training, with development, with just they don't have the skills, but they can get those skills or they want to get those skills, and so there's a motor check that goes there of maybe you can't do it, but maybe you can, and if you can, do you want to? And if those answers are, I can and I want to, then it's like, okay, let's invest here. This is a good relationship. This is a good partnership, and we'll help you get to that next level. If they can't or they don't want to, then it's time to work out the transition of them, for the best of the team, out of the particular team. And so then it's, what can we do to help you, find something else that might be more, suited to what you want to do. it's taking those actions kind of as quickly and as respectfully as you can. So a negative person can have a huge impact on a team. An underperformer can have a huge impact on a team if stuff isn't addressed. If if the reason why those things aren't occurring isn't in some process of improvement or in some process of moving forward. And I'm a big believer that there's a space for everybody in this world. There's something that's going to tap into everybody's skills, and probably to a fault, like I would like to help the person get to that particular space. So I tend to leverage my network of wonderful people that are out there. Of I have this person, they have these skills, this is what they're really good at, this is where they might need some improvement. Would you have anything on their team, or would this fit into your particular scenario? And so helping people find where they might have a better value and a better chance at success of life. But it's really, to me, it's finding out why it happens, and is the motor oriented in the right way, or is the motor oriented into a way that we need to look at a different option. So it's that triage that happens.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really beautiful and very human and generous. Do you think that it's scalable? Like, I mean, depending on how big the team gets, I'm curious if leaders have that capacity to scale that, across the board, if they've got, 300 people under their umbrella, or if they've got 30 people under their umbrella. That's a lot of people in their charge. How scalable is that? I guess, is there a limit to that too? And you're probably trusting at that point other reports up to your umbrella, to guide others under theirs. So you have these layers, but is it scalable?
I think it can be scalable. So I think it's important that that part of it is scalable. So if you're ever getting into an organization where there's too many people that have meaningful interactions, something's already broken, and other things are already wrong. So then there's not really the one-on-one coaching, communication of trying to help people improve. So if there's not a structure that's supporting that, I think there's other things wrong. And technology is helping with this immensely right now too. So a lot of leaders were kind of limited in the past of how many one-on-ones can I have in a week, or how many touch bases can I do. I mean, a lot of these large language models that are trained on I'm not sitting down taking notes all the time anymore. It's like we're recording conversations, we're summarizing this, we got action items that are kicking off that are going on people's calendars. We can start to have better structures in place to do this. And NVIDIA's CEO came out. I think he has like 300 direct reports, which just at first seemed insane. But he's had a couple articles where he's published where it actually helps to have that many, because then he's having mass communications with audiences. Everybody's getting the same message at the same time. He's setting examples and coaching real time in meetings where it's not um, you know handled one off on all of these different exceptions. So I think there is ways that you could definitely, as a leader, demonstrate it on a large scale. You can handle communication a little bit differently. You can do this, and I think it's also important though for people to have, whether it's direct leaders, whether it's mentors in the system, whether it's sponsors in there, somebody that can actively bounce feedback, help coach you through what you want to do next, and understand what you're trying to achieve as a person. And I think all of those things have to come together. And if it doesn't, I think people feel horrible. You feel like a cog in the system. You feel unappreciated. Conversely, your productivity goes down, even though people are thinking they're saving money by not having middle managers do those particular things. And it starts to go, as the appreciation goes down, so does bottom line. Productivity, all of those things start to sink. So
Yeah.
I think it can scale. I think it has to scale. It's hard to scale, and but it's important.
Speaking of people sort of morale and productivity plummeting, no more do we see this than following a mass layoff or multiple rounds of layoffs. And I'm sure you've weathered your fair share. How do you, as a leader, pick the team back up, the remaining team, following a layoff? How do you realign them so they understand why this happened and what's to be expected and re-inspire them?
This is kind of a depends scenario. It really depends on the reason why it had to happen in the first place. And so if it has to happen, you have to realize like it's affecting a lot of people's lives. This is, people's personal lives. It's, it creates this whole dynamic of, catastrophe for a lot of people. And so if it's got to happen for a company, it better be really crystal clear of why it had to happen and what's changing to make sure that it's not going to happen again. Because a lot of companies that'll say, oh, it's market conditions, or it's these things. It's like, well, what are you doing to prepare for market conditions in the future? How are we hedging against this? Like, what is the corrective action we're taking on the other side of this? And if there's not a good, reason behind that, I usually will probably jump and start paddling with people like, hey, let's go find, some different shoreline somewhere else to set up. But if there is that reasoning or rationale of, this is why this is happening, this is the corrective action we're going to do to prevent this from happening in the future, then I think it's just being transparent with the teams of, this sucks. This is going to suck for everybody that's impacted. This sucks for everybody that's not impacted. And here's why you have reason to believe in what we're going to do going forward. And you know, I'm one of those people that have a hard time. I can't do stuff I don't believe in. So it's, you know, if if I can't believe in that message, then I know it's my time to also start to do something else. So
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what you said before, even about leaders, right? That admitting mistake, because companies make mistakes, they're run by people, people make mistakes. So I think that that transparency that we're going, mea culpa, we're going to do it differently now. So I think that that also fosters trust. And like to your point about, what are you doing to prepare for the next, negative market condition, and how do we get on board with that? Going back to vision, because something you had written on LinkedIn really inspired me, which was that you help individuals become more than just employees. You help them become these integral contributors towards this sort of central vision, this unified vision. And how do you do that? Is that something that you do separate from the companies, where the company's mission is essentially make more money? And that's not a bad thing. That's why we go to work. But how do you help unify a team around a vision?
and so if the vision isn't super clear at the company, there's a few things that you can do to help create that. Of some of the companies I worked with before, it was really showing people the link between what the company is enabled, like what its companies are doing, and how they're actually helping to fulfill those customers doing those things. And when you can see, sometimes it's really hard to see the connection of, I'm a senior quality engineer, I'm testing software, how's that actually helping on, the other side? And it's like, well, you're responsible here for helping us catch these defects, for the uptime, for our customers being able to go through and, order these products, create these things, meet their market demand. And, this is the result of, our end customers being happy. And it's showing the line from where somebody is sitting to the happiness that's getting received on the other end. Like that's the dot that you want to connect for everybody. And it's kind of hard to get the mechanics of that right. Like as a software team or a technology team, you're delivering stories and you're doing sprints. You're kind of in the grind of this, and sometimes it's just it's the step back, and it's actually reaching out to like be friends with your sales teams. If you're in technology, be friends with your sales partners, and have them bring in customers, have them give the customer feedback directly to the software teams. If I loved your product, this is what we did, this is what we were able to create, this is our new innovation that's out there. And the more that you make that tangible reality, the better. Huge believer in making sure that as you're doing stories, as you're coding, as you're going through, and whatever you're setting up here, make sure it ties back to how it's actually benefiting a customer. What is the feature? What's the business value that this is unlocking? And that direct connection ties people back to the vision of what the company's doing, and you get excited actually to start to do this more and more, because it's not wasted, it's not forgotten, it's not lost, it's appreciated. And
That's great.
I don't know, yeah, tie it
Oh,
off.
I appreciate that. Well, I'm really curious, Brian, how did you learn all this? Because there are so many leaders who don't seem to know how to lead well, who don't seem to know how to create psychologically safe workplaces and understand that to move slower there's tremendous intentionality there. So it seems like you mentioned systems. Seems like you have systems, you have a vision. Where did that come from? Or multiple sources potentially here.
It probably is multiple sources. I had the benefit of my first job being in probably the most incredible setup, and I didn't appreciate this at the time. It was all women leaders, and I didn't realize how unique that was at the time. But it was Jenny Edstrom, Julie Engel. I could say Shannon Madden, Brenda Atkinson. It was such a unique collaboration of creating a team of, oh, you look like you'd be interested in this. You should take a training on this. Here's the link to sign up and go do it. Or, I think you'd want, this is something good you should try to do and figure this out. And it was such an amazing experience of team, of trust, of just belief. Like that's really what it was. Like I went in there knowing nothing, and these people, they believed in me, they invested in me, and you know it's something I'm super grateful for to this day, because I know without that initial start, but it was learning from them, and it was creating a mindset at a young age of, you don't know this, but you can learn this. And read this book, take this class, go to this seminar and figure it out. And that to me has been the most valuable skill I've ever learned in my entire career. Is I don't have to know how to do it. I can learn how to do it. I can go figure it out. And I just didn't realize how amazing that group was until I consulted a few other places, been at a few other companies, and I was like, that was special. And so I don't know, I try to recreate that everywhere now, but
I
it was
love that.
learning from some of the best.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad for you. I feel like as a result of that, now it has this, ripple effect in the world where you're bringing that same level of belief in others and empowerment to your, future organizations and your teams. And I think that, since starting a company myself just, I don't know, less than a year ago, what a powerful switch from, oh, I can't do this, I'm so stupid, I know nothing, which is pretty much every day that feeling I have to overcome and say, nope, I don't know it yet, but
Yeah,
I will. And
yeah.
it's very powerful. It totally changes your mindset. So what a gift you're giving others. And I wonder, are there any books? I mean, I know that you're an author and you've written before, and I'm curious, are there books that either you've books that you're writing, have written, or have read that have really continued to inspire and further foster this belief system in you?
I mean, I could give you a list and we could post it up here. There's so many, and sometimes I find these in the weirdest places. So I just finished reading The Disappearing Spoon, for example, and it's a very weird book about the periodic table. It this is it's fascinating, but it fits into this, and it's about how all of the elements create a system, and that system has these properties, and if you learn to use these properties in different ways, it can has these huge ramifications for science, for medical devices, for space travel, and all of these things. So I like to read stuff that inspires me to see patterns and stuff I would normally not see patterns. I know that's probably not for everybody. um Atomic Habits is a one that I've read periodically over and over again. A lot of it is also the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, of just you know be able to sit with your emotions, be able to sit with your reactions, and be able to, understand it's your reaction to something that's going to cause it to, have a different reality or not. And so it's the internal work that is out there. Um, the you know how to be disliked is a good one. Of but in the same context of understanding, like, you're trying to seek approval from yourself, and you're trying to, get better for yourself, and the more that you get better with yourself, the more that you're going to be better for other people, or able to foster that in other people. The gift is another good one. It was on Oprah's book club, so I had to go do it. But about how to just, deal with your emotions, and work through those particular things, and then it gives you the capacity to help you do that with other people. So I don't know. There's a ton. How to be a second, Nathan Young. I'll throw that out there too. There's communities of people that are out there building systems. This is just how you see the world, to try to reshape it and make it better. And yeah, I don't know. I'll send you a list. They're weird. Some will be weird, but um, all tidbits that you can take away.
Please do. Weird is welcome. And there's a lot that you can learn through looking in a whole other sphere for inspiration. And also, you mentioned patterns. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about life, is that when you learn something and you see a pattern, there's this dopamine rush, unlike anything else, where it's like, wow, there's truth there. Like, there is this profound
Uh,
overlap in this arena and this arena, and you wouldn't think there would be. But I think it makes life feel a little bit more magical, and also like you can get at the essence of something. You can finally grab hold of something. It's pretty powerful.
oh yeah, The Disappearing Spoon is one of those books where it's like, it's all these little stories, and I kind of like that, where it's scientific. You learn something about the
Yeah.
universe, and then there's, like, tabloidish stories that accompany it to help you the understanding. But it all comes down to elements, and, things throughout the universe behave in, certain ways, and they're governed by principles. And, understanding those things allows you to, as the Matrix says, bend and break. I love those types of things.
Awesome. Well, the disappearing spoon is now on my list, and I would love for you to send me more. That would be great. My last question for you today, and it goes sort of hand in hand with this, is do you think people fail to spend enough time on themselves? And so therefore you see that ripple effect in their professional life. And why I ask this, I recently, and I've become kind of obsessed with this quote by Jim Rohn, which is, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And I think a lot of us went to work working very hard on our job and maybe less so on ourselves. And that's also going slow to go faster later. It's a lot of work to work on
Hmm.
ourselves. And I'm curious if maybe we're not doing enough on our own self-improvement. Would you agree with that, or
I would 100% agree with that. And I like it took me a long time to realize this. So I think you're right. You jump into this, you have a career, you got things, and you're trying to, like, very tactically go through the motions of, how do I satisfy this request? How do I, finish this thing? And it took me a long time to realize, like, the person that I'm in the biggest battle with is myself. And why that's, like, I think, super important to leaders. Like, if you're not really introspective, if you're not looking at, how do I improve, how do I get better at this, how do I, treat people better, as your career grows and grows, and you have more and more influence, the implications of you not, owning your shit, so to speak, are bigger and bigger. Like, the blast radius of that gets more magnified. It's huger. The footprint, the blueprint is, it, starts to get more and more catastrophic. And so, as you work on yourself more and more, you're able to help, you know, in an opposite way of that, magnify outcomes of changing things for the better. And it's the ripple effect of that, just it's so much bigger than what you can make it. But it starts with the self control of yourself. How am I internalizing this? How am I responding? How am I showing up? What am I doing in this situation? And I spend a half hour almost every night, just sitting down and, like, and sometimes like you get my journal's like a huge fight, and you think there's like 5 people writing it, but it's oh, I should have did that better, and oh, I wish I would have said that, and but it's that reflection that makes you do it better the next time, and makes the next involvement better. It makes you know, and as you touch more people's lives, that's what's going to count. And that's what the ripple effect is going to be even bigger than it is. So I 100% work on yourself. And it's a lifelong journey of working on yourself.
Well, for all the hard work that you've done, it's very clear you've had a tremendously positive impact in the world. So I think that it can be hard sometimes to recognize it in ourselves, right? As you were mentioning with the journaling, and the self-criticism often is alive and well in my arena. But thank you, Brian, for showing up in my life and in so many others for who you are and how you've had such a profound impact positively on the world, and you continue to do so.
And likewise, thank you for doing what you do, because your ripple effect is well beyond this. It's awesome. I'm very glad that we've met here.
Same. Well, please, like I said, send me that book list. And thank you again for all the insights today for those who are in a leadership capacity, those who are moving up into one, and those who are just doing their thing, trying to be a little bit better, today and tomorrow. So thank you for joining me today, Brian, on Cupalo Conversations, and for all the fabulous insights and book recommendations.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.